There we go. Now she's got it. Okay. This will be different. I'm not used to holding this thing. No, I can grab it if I want it. Thanks. We'll just try it like this. Anyway, they're going to be, we know the history of this. At least I would assume most of us do. Verse 14 says, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. We're going to see what he just told Abraham. We're going to see the end of that in the book of Exodus. And I don't know, I may come back after that and look at what led up to it, how they actually got to that land. They're both, it all fits together. So anyway, this is what, I'm calling it a promise. You don't have to call it that, but God said to Abraham, know of a surety that this is going to happen. So I think it qualifies as a promise. So when I refer to it to that, that's why. 400 years. You know how much is said about those 400 years? Almost nothing. We're told about how they got there, what happened in the early years of it, and then right at the very end of it. That was not 400 good, happy years. And we are told enough that we know that, and just by what God says here. But anyway, go to, look at one thing. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Stay there in Genesis for a second. If I'm not too late, I got to go back and find it. One more page. I'll be all right. Verse 7 in Genesis 15. Just another little, just so you get an idea of what's going on. And he said unto him, I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it. They're in what we would call the area where Israel is now. Israel's tiny right now compared to what it used to be, but that's a whole nother issue. Okay, now go to Genesis 50. Right at the end of the book of Genesis, just the last few verses. Verse 24. Now we're at the end of the 400 years. Or no, wait a minute. No, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Let's just read it. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will visit you and bring you out of this land into the land which he sware unto Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. This is at the beginning of the 400 years, right after one lifetime, Joseph's lifetime, after they've been in captivity to Egypt. I die, and God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, and to Isaac, and to Jacob. That's what we just read back in chapter 15. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. So Joseph died being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. Now we get into the book of Exodus, and 3 weeks ago we went through chapter 1, and we got a little ways into chapter 2. Just a couple highlights, which I should have marked. It would have went a lot smoother, but verse 8 in chapter 1 of Exodus. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. If you remember, Joseph found favor with Pharaoh, or the king of Egypt, and that's how God was able to. What do I want to say? I want to say it the right way. God used those men's lives, and he changed hearts to bring how many did they start with? 70 people. The descendants of the 12 sons of Jacob and their children that they had at that time. 70 people came into Egypt. And God used Joseph and Pharaoh. He changed their hearts. He gave Joseph favor in the sight of Pharaoh. And Joseph was able to bring them in, put them in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh was all for it. He says, Joseph, I like you. You're my number one guy. We're going to take care of your family. Give them this land. Now there comes along a Pharaoh which knew not Joseph. Things change. They change quickly. Verse 9 in chapter 1, and he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. I don't know how far. Well, I do know. This is at the end of the. I keep saying that. I better just read it. At the beginning of early in the 400 years, come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there fall out any war, they join also unto our armies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore did they set over them taskmasters to afflict them with burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses, and they afflicted them, and the more they multiplied and grew and were grievous, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve them with rigor. That means to severity or cruelty. So they went through this for real close to 400 years. Now Moses comes along, and we saw 3 weeks ago how when Moses was born, the decree that Pharaoh made that all the male children should be killed, told the midwives to do that, and they didn't. And Moses' mother put him in a little basket. It's called an ark somewhere, a little basket boat, whatever you want to call it. And he was found by Pharaoh's daughter. I'm not going to go back and read all that, but he was taken in and he was raised as Pharaoh's daughter by his own mother. Remember his older sister? I think it was Miriam, I believe was her name. We covered that a few weeks ago. But she watched what was going to happen to her little baby brother. And when Pharaoh's daughter found her, the sister went to her and said, you want me to find somebody that can nurse the baby for you? And she went back and got her mom. Who but God could make all that stuff happen? So Moses was raised in Pharaoh's house. Okay, let me find my spot. Let's pick up in chapter 2 and verse 11. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out into his brethren, and he looked on their burdens. What's that tell us when it says that he went out unto his brethren? He realized that he was an Israelite. He looked on their burdens, which we just talked about, 400 years worth of burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Let's stop there for a second, and I think we read this, but go to Acts. Acts chapter 7. And we'll probably spend a little bit of time in this, and then we'll go back to Genesis or to Exodus. But in Acts chapter 7, when Stephen was about to get stoned, this account that he gave was what got him stoned. And we're not going to go through the whole thing because there's more to it than I want to look at. But Let's start in. We're given a little bit of information here, just a few things that Exodus didn't tell us. In chapter 7, verse 2, and he said, "Men, brethren, fathers, hearken. The God of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Charan, and said unto them, Get thee up, or get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I shall show thee." This is before that promise. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Let's go to verse 12. And when Jacob heard that there was corn in Egypt, remember there was a famine before they came to Egypt, he sent out our fathers first. And at the second time, Joseph was made known unto his brethren, and Joseph's kindred was made known unto Pharaoh. Then sent Joseph and called his father Jacob to him, and all his kindred, 75 souls. I said it wrong. There were 75, right? I said there were 70. 75 people. That's all. That was the whole beginning of the nation of Israel when they came into Egypt. Okay, I want to get down into just a second. It's hard to do with one hand. I was going to say it make me crazy, but I probably should say it make me crazier. Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. You're very helpful. Okay, let's go to verse 17. But when the time of the promise drew nigh, I never caught that. God called it a promise. Works for me. Which God had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt, till another king arose which knew not Joseph. The same dealt subtly with our kindred, and evil entreated our fathers, so that they cast out their young children to the end they might not live. In which time Moses was born and was exceeding fair, and nourished up in his father's house 3 months. And when he was cast out, Pharaoh's daughter took him up, nourished him for her own son. Here's something that's important. And Moses was learned in all wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. Tuck that away. That issue is going to pop up, I think, in chapter 3 or 4 of Exodus when we get to it. But he was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and deeds. Remember what we just read back in Exodus. He came out and looked upon his brethren. Even though he was raised this way, he still realized that these guys that were in slavery were his brethren. And that put a thought in his head. We're going to see it in just a minute. And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel, and seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian. We saw that. We just saw that in chapter 2 in Exodus. Here's the thought that he had, or the idea that he had. I don't know what's the right thing to call it, but here's what God says about it. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that God by his hand would deliver them. being raised in Pharaoh's house, learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, was a mighty man in words and deeds. Yet he knew his background, he knew where he came from, and his idea, and I'm saying it that way because I don't believe God has showed him yet what he's supposed to do. That's 40 years later. But Moses being in a pretty good position, but yet understanding what condition his brethren was in, he supposed his brethren would have understood how that God by his hand would deliver them, but they understood not. And this is Stephen's last words that he's telling these guys that are about to stone him. He's given them a history of Israel, and this is part of it. And the next day he showed himself unto them that strove. We're going to see that back in Exodus. Let's just go back to Exodus now. But that's important. The way he was raised, the ways of the Egyptians, he was mighty in words and deeds, and he had this in his mind that he's going to free these people. He had it in his mind. Something has to happen to him before he can do that. Okay, back to Exodus. Verse 12 again, and he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. They were in an argument. They were, whatever the situation was. They strove together, and he said unto him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Before I read the rest of that verse, and it's probably familiar to all of you anyway, Moses goes out, and an Egyptian was abusing a Hebrew. He killed the Egyptian, buried him, and it says he looked this way and that way. Anybody watching? I think now's a good time to do this. Now, the next day, these 2 guys are arguing. Verse 14 again, and he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou did killest the Egyptian? I would have liked to see Moses' face when he said that, because I don't think he was expecting that. Not at all. He looked this way and that way. I think he thought he was in the clear. I'm not saying what Moses did was right or wrong. That's not the issue, but he thought nobody's going to know about this. And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Now here's a fairly young man, from my perspective, that all of a sudden, he apparently had a little bit of authority. He was in a good spot. We'll look at it again. That was that was back in Acts. He was raised. How did it say that? In the knowledge of Egypt, and was mighty in words and deeds. That's close. He got called out, and he feared and said, surely this thing is known. And when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. Moses' world just got turned upside down. He had this idea that I am going to free my people, and in a matter of one day to the next, now Pharaoh's out to get me, and everything's known. What's he do? Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he saw, I'm a verse behind. That's okay. Verse 15, now Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. And the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled troughs to water their flocks. And the shepherds came and drove them away. Kind of a side point. Women weren't looked at real highly back in these days. And I know that's an issue from time to time, place to place, all throughout history. But the shepherds would come and just drive like they're nobody, drive them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. Moses had a little bit of integrity. Can we say that? That's not right. Kind of like when he slew the Egyptian. You're beating this guy. He's a slave. Maybe he went too far, maybe he didn't. I'm not here to debate that. Moses had some integrity. He helped them. He watered their flock. And when they came to rule their father, he said, "How is it that you're come so soon this day?" This is really a side point. And we're going to see how Moses' father-in-law is helpful through Moses' stay in Midian. It just tells us a little bit about him. It's a way, way off side point. He paid attention to what was going on. He knew when the girls went out to water the flocks, he knew about when they should get back. They got back early. It ain't a big deal, but it shows a little bit something about him. "How is it that ye are come so soon this day?" And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds." In other words, this deal with the shepherds happens every day because we always got back late because they'd chase us off. We had to wait till they were gone. This is the Dave paraphrase. But they got back early. It was strange to their dad, but it was only because things went the way they should have. "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and also drew water enough for us and watered the flocks. And he said unto his daughters, Where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him that he may eat bread." Tells us a little bit more about him. This guy helped us. Let's cook him up some dinner. Let's treat the guy good. Let's thank him. Let's find out who he is. They're going to find out. And he said unto his, verse 21, right? And Moses was content to dwell with the man. And he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. And she bare him a son, called his name Gershom. For he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. I have no idea how much time passed in verse 21. May have been weeks, may have been a year, probably wasn't a real long time. But he went from coming into the land knowing nobody to having a wife and having a child. So it took a little bit of time. And he was content. Where is it? Okay, we'll keep going. And it came to pass in process of time that the king of Egypt died. That was the guy that was after Moses. And the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and the cry came up to God by reason of the bondage, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When it says God remembered, does that mean that he forgot? No. No. God does not forget. And God looked upon the children of Israel and had respect unto them. That word respect, I thought that was, they've been there for 400 years going through this. Now, all of a sudden, God told Abraham years and years before this, they're going to be there for 400 years and it ain't going to be good. But God had respect to them. So I got out my Strongs and I opened it up, and it said, to ascertain by seeing, to make certain. Now here's to define or reduce to precision by removing any obscurity or ambiguity. I think you could reduce that down to he made certain when it says he had respect. He made certain. God's always certain. God knows what's going on, but he understood every little detail, and he knew the time, that 400-year time, was up. We're looking at all this to see, and I think I said earlier, when we started this 3 weeks ago, after that lesson in Pastor's message, it had nothing to do with this, but he said he was preaching about the power of God to change lives. And this is the power of God to change a nation. He does both. He does them both quite well. Chapter 3. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even Horeb. Hold on there just a second. Anybody remember Foghorn Leghorn? Today I kind of feel like him. I'm about as confused as a centipede at a toe counting contest. Somebody remembered? Not confused, just my mind's on other things. Verse 7, verse 30. Yes, don't turn to Acts, but that same Stephen's last words. I didn't read this far, but then Moses fled at his saying and was a stranger in the land of Midian, where he begat 2 sons. And when 40 years were expired, there appeared unto him in the wilderness of Mount Sion an angel of the Lord. So 40 years he's going to spend doing, I've got to find my spot again. Chapter 3, verse 1, Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. That's a 40-year period of time. Let me get my glasses off. That's more than a lifetime for some of you. Here's a guy that was raised by Pharaoh's daughter in the ways of the Egyptians, was mighty in word and in deed, tried to avenge his brother, got called out on it the next day. Pharaoh was out to kill him, fled. Now he finds himself raising sheep, taking care of sheep for 40 years. There are very few people, that have a job for 40 years. In today's society, anyway. Very few. A lot of 25s, quite a few 30s, 35, you start dropping off. By the time you get to 40, there aren't very many. There's some, not very many. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in flame of fire. The reason I made a big deal out of that 40 years, when Moses was a younger man and he avenged his brother and all that happened, remember, he was raised in the ways of the Egyptians and was mighty in word and deed. He was, I'm not going to say how high up. I think the movie got it wrong. But he was in a pretty good position. And he supposed that they should understand how God would deliver them by his hand. Let me See if I can find this real quick. Ooh, wrong chapter. There it is. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Verse 24. Verse 23. But we preach Christ crucified, unto the Jews a stumbling block, unto the Greeks foolishness. But unto them which are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. Pastor spoke on this passage, I think, more than once. But verse 26, for ye see your calling, brethren, how that not many wise after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. What's that got to do with Exodus? When Moses was a young, strong, well-educated, mighty in word and deed man, he supposed he would lead them out of Egypt. Now, 40 years later, after taking care of his father-in-law's sheep, I think God sanded off a lot of those prideful edges. And he became the person we saw here in 1 Corinthians. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, I think that he might have been also teaching him patience for the people he was going to be leading.
I got loud. Tina said she thinks he was also teaching him patience. I think you could make, I agree 100%, I think you could make a long list of things that God was teaching him over those 40 years. I couldn't agree more. Just a little bit more. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him, and we're back in Exodus chapter 3, verse 2. The angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. I've had people say I don't know if they're making an assumption or not, was this a green, real, like the bushes we would see outside right now after the time of the year when everything's growing and leaves are green? Or was it more like a sagebrush bush? I don't know. Doesn't matter. God lit it on fire and it didn't burn up. The bush was not consumed, and Moses said, I will go aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. It's a strange thing to see. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither, but put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. That's a pretty common response. Even, you look back through the Old Testament, even when angels appeared unto people, biggest share of the time, they fell on their face. He was afraid to look upon God, which was a proper response, but I don't know. I think that's a good place to stop. I got one more little thing that I want to share with everybody. I'm sure everybody knows about Deb Fitz. It's going to be different. And we can look around this room and we can see people that have lost spouses and parents and sometimes children, and on we go. And we look at this thing called death. And depending on how close you are to somebody, determines the degree that it hurts. But it hurts. Every time somebody passes away, people are hurt. And God gave me a verse. Turn to Psalm 116. It's obvious reading this account through Genesis and Exodus of Israel and so many, you get into the New Testament, any of it. Does God look at things the way we do? Not very often. Not very often. But this verse really spoke to my heart the last couple of days because I don't look at it that way. But God does. Remember that. God does. Psalm 116 and verse 15. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. We serve a good God. And when people leave this earth to go to be home with him, God sees that as precious. I fail to see it that way because it hurts. But to God, it's precious. That spoke to me. I just wanted to encourage you with that. And you're going to have an extra 4 minutes to roam around between classes. We're going to close with that. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much that you share your heart in verses like this. And we don't see things the way you do. You see things right. You see them for the way they really are, for what's best. Thank you that we can open your word and be encouraged each time. And thank you for all those we know that had their faith in you, that have gone home, that you look at that as precious. Help us to understand that more. Comfort the hearts of Deb's family. Thank you for her life and the lives of so many others that aren't here anymore, that used to be sitting in these seats every Sunday. Lord, and thank you for being good. In Jesus' name, amen.